He's gonna leave me hanging? Yeah, he's gonna leave me hanging. Alright, well. Leave me hanging, I suppose. It is Tuesday, fellow agents, which means another vendor resets. We have a handful of items in here that are pretty cool. Most things are worth purchasing just for your proficiency. Some other things are worth, adding to your stash. Maybe you're gonna make a build on it. Maybe you can enhance one of the builds you already have. But we'll get straight into it. Starting with our DC main vendor, we have the Pristine example. This comes with a great core, almost I would say 3/4 of the way weapon damage. Comes with headshot damage and hazard protection. You would probably 100% be swapping out that hazard protection, and you would have a pretty good chest piece for a marksman rifle build. You have marksman rifle as your brand set bonus. Like I said, swap out that hazard protection, and you have your talent perfect focus. Increases total weapon damage by 6% every second you are aiming, while scoped 8 times or higher, up to 60%. So up to 60% weapon damage you will earn the longer you are aimed down your sight. Obviously, you need to be using a marksman rifle or just a rifle in general. The talent isn't specific, although for the brand set you want to be using a marksman rifle to get that 10% bonus damage. But that's our DZ main vendor, and we have this exact chest piece over at the countdown vendor. And as you can see, same exact piece, except you have armor regen and health. I wouldn't purchase this one. That other one obviously would fit a marksman rifle build or whatever damage build you're trying to use it for. It'll just work a lot better than this one. Plus, countdown currency, depending on if you farm countdown a lot, might be a little more difficult to get than the main game currency. So I would ignore this one, stick with the DC main. But over here we have the Born Great, our latest named G36, which, as you can see, the core attributes are pretty good. They're pretty high up there. You have your attribute reload speed that you'll probably swap out. I would only really purchase this if you're really having a hard time finding it. I think I unlock this pretty often. So if you need a decent one, you have one here. You could swap out that attribute. This comes with your talent perfect stabilize. Firing your weapon increases weapon accuracy by 1% and weapon stability by 1% per shot, up to 75%. If you stop firing, the bonuses reset after 6 seconds. So obviously your reload speed isn't going to take you 6 seconds. So as long as you're firing your weapon, you'll have that 70% accuracy, excuse me, and weapon stability. But like I said, I found this easy to come by. Only purchase it if you really, really need it. Next up, we have the Point Man Gilligard chest piece. Brand set gives you some bonus armor as your first. I usually only focus on the first because very rarely am I using multiple. But this comes with our core armor, which is pretty low. It's pretty low. This comes with your attributes headshot damage, which is pretty high, and explosive resistance, which is pretty high. This comes with your talent perfect vanguard. Deploying a shield makes it invulnerable for 5 seconds and grants 50% of your armor as bonus armor to all allies for 20 seconds. So this would be something that would probably work on more of a support build. You're going to support your team, make sure your team is putting in the work while you keep them alive. I'm not sure if I would purchase this one. The headshot damage is pretty nice, but being that you're probably going to switch out the explosive resistance depending on the build you're using, but you probably are going to switch that out. And then you have a pretty low core. I don't mind optimizing because I put in the time to be able to have the resources, but if you don't, it may not be ideal. Next up, move up to our clan vendor that has something pretty good. Now over here at the clan vendor, we have the Surge rifle. This comes with some pretty good cores, rifle damage, critical hit damage, they're pretty high. You have your attribute magazine size, which you can swap out to whatever you wish. Damage to armor, health damage, I don't know, whatever really floats your boat on the build you're making. And then you have your talent perfect spike. Headshots grant plus 25% skill damage for 15 seconds. So as you can see, you probably want this build to be used on a skill build just because of that talent, and not a bad rifle. But now we move over to, I was going to say our next place, but there's something here that I actually think is pretty well worth it, which is your shield mod. I don't feel I bump into these mods right here too often, and this is a pretty cool mod. This adds 4% damage bonus per enemy when you have a shield. So if you're using a DPS build and you'll most likely have the Crusader shield on, you deploy your shield, you get an extra damage bonus per enemy in the area. Really good mod. I have a ton of these. I would definitely recommend purchasing this. But now we move over to our other, I guess you can say, bases, settlements, whatever you want to call them. And they each have something nice that we can purchase. So we'll start off with the campus. And over at the campus, we have the Dare light machine gun. Again, a weapon just like the Born Great that I feel like I bump into very often. I definitely don't need to purchase this. I don't need to bring up the proficiency personally. But as I know, and we all know, this game is RNG, so maybe you don't bump into this weapon as much as I do, then I would definitely purchase it for that proficiency, just because the attributes are really not there. You're probably going to switch your regular attributes, damage to armor, and the cost of bringing up that LMG damage and damage to targets out of cover will be quite expensive. But if you do decide to purchase it, to keep it, to use it, bring up that proficiency, this comes with your talent perfect flatline. Will go great with the Heartbreaker build because this amplifies weapon damage by 20% to pulsed enemies. After 2 kills, applies pulse to the next enemy you hit. If you want a Heartbreaker build, I actually just posted a Heartbreaker build, I believe last week. I'll put a little link or a pin somewhere for that build. If you want to look over at Heartbreaker and you want to bring this weapon up in particular, it'll work just fine. Kingbreaker is usually the go-to, but if you need to bring up proficiency on the Dare, it's still a great build to use. Now we move over to the theater, and here at the theater we have the Baker's Dozen, which has some great attributes. You have your core, which is rifle damage and critical hit damage, and it comes with damage to armor as your third attribute, which is fantastic for a rifle. Now the Baker's Dozen comes with your talent Perfect Lucky Shot. Magazine capacity is increased by 30%. Missed shots from cover have a 100% chance to return to the magazine. So essentially, as long as you're on cover, you shouldn't have to reload, which is pretty damn awesome as long as you're in cover. And you would probably bring up that rifle damage. It's pretty low. The critical hit damage and damage to armor will cost you a little less to optimize. But rifle damage, you can max that out. You'll have a really nice rifle for any rifle builds that you want to start working on and get the hang of. But next up, we go to the castle. Now here at the castle, we have the Commando. This is a good example of doing what I've been preaching with these videos, which is bringing up proficiency. Whenever I level up in my shade level, I always just put it toward the currency on my scavenging. Why? Because if I really desperately need resources, I'll just make a new agent. So since I always have above around 600k on the resources, it's always for moments like this. As you can see, Commando, I have it at a rank 5, and this Commando's okay. It's not something I think I would keep because the headshot damage is pretty low. I'm probably going to switch out the swap speed on that attribute, and it's probably not a weapon I would really enjoy, so do I really want to spend the money on just making it really good to use? I would most likely just do this and purchase a bunch and just bring up the proficiency that way. But if you do want to use the weapon, this comes with your attribute Perfectly Naked. Hitting an enemy with no armor grants 50% headshot damage for 8 seconds, or an additional 50%. Obviously not bad, but you'll probably find marksman rifles you might enjoy a bit more. Now, with that being the last named item here, there are 2 items in here that I want to highlight. Well, 1 item, I'm sorry, that I thought wasn't too bad for a regular piece of gear, which is the Walker Harris & Co. holster. This brand set comes with weapon damage. If you grab another piece, you get some damage to armor, and if you grab another piece, you get some damage to health. The core is weapon damage, which is 3/4 of the way. It's pretty high up there. You wouldn't have to really mess with that. Comes with crit chance and weapon handling. So if you wanted to swap out that weapon handling for a critical hit damage attribute, you'll have a max crit damage attribute, almost max weapon damage, and you would have to just optimize that crit chance a bit. And you have a pretty decent chest piece, which I actually purchased just before I recorded this. Not a bad holster. It's kind of hard to get pieces that have double crit on them, as the agents could know that are grinding for that. But that is our rotation today of our vendor items. Please comment down below, what items are you purchasing this week? What items were your highlighted items? And I'll see you all on the next one.